All right. Looks like something's a little. Oh, let me fix something with the video here. Go to filters. Adjust the threshold a little bit. It seems a little flickery. It's a little better. So, all right. Yesterday, I had a little bit of a video dropout towards the evening, but I got back online and I replaced all of the buttons with links because that's what they are. They're changing the URL, the address bar. They should be links so you can see where they're going to go to. So if you click on any of the links, you'll see this is going to category 1, page 1. If I click next, all of those links, well, they don't update because they are always going to take you to page 1. Obviously, if the next and previous, these links tell you exactly where they're going to take you. If I go back to my to-do list, now question, I might take a brief question. I know what binary trees are, but I want to know how they're represented in code. That's a good question. Uh, we will take a look at a binary tree just to make sure we're on the same page. So my understanding of a binary tree in the abstract is that you've got nodes, and each node can have two children that it points to. And so you can replicate this, down or as you want to. Binary tree. Uh, One thing that we could call out is that this particular binary tree that I've drawn is not balanced. So I guess the other thing about the binary tree is that we'd expect the left side is less than the right side. So the smallest value in this tree we'd expect to be here because it's to the left of this node. And then this could be 1, could be 2. Now the left side of this has to be less than 2, greater than 1 is like 1.5 or something like that, and so forth. But it's not balanced because the depth of the tree is like this data could be represented with a shallower tree. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 4, 5, 6, 7 nodes here and 3 levels deep, but I think we could put 7 nodes into fewer levels. So if we did 3 nodes there, put 2 children here, and then 2 children here. Now we've got 7 nodes in fewer levels. I might be glossing over some important details of balancing here, uh, but the one important property of the binary tree is that it's often more useful if it's balanced because you have fewer steps to get to any node. Like if I wanted to say, is 6 in this tree? On this tree, if 6 is here, and if they are smaller values on the left, greater values on the right, then I can check, is this node greater than or less than 6? Tells me to go this way. Is this node greater than or less than 6? Tells me to go this way. So I only have to make 2 comparisons to a light on 6 here, whereas here I have to go 1, 2, 3. So that's something to consider for the binary tree. The question is, how is it represented in code? That's going to depend. So I could make I guess I've got a Scratch file I can go and look at. And let's see if Quokka is still running here, so we can look at that. I'm going to have to start Quokka. How did I get this? Toggle for current file. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So binary tree, we could make a node. So I'm in TypeScript, so I will make this. So I'll say binary tree node is a node that has a value, we will call a number, and a left and a right, which is optional. So I have this binary tree node. I can make my tree start with value 1, left as a value, which is, I'm going to say it's not going to, this is a very shallow tree. We got our right as a value, and I'm not going to liquid, yeah. So each node could be its own object here. Yeah, this would be a way to represent it in JavaScript. I believe there is an alternate way to do this with an array. I don't know off the top of my head exactly how to do this, but I will give it a shot. So if I had an array, I'm going to represent the cells in the array here. So this is my array. Let's imagine that it's actually like code, but I've just got little boxes to represent each item in the array. I could think about, I'm going to put one more value in here. So, and we'll draw this out. So I'll give these colors. So red, green, blue, yellow, running out of colors. It's very close to that one. Like deeper colors. Deep blue. We'll go deeper green. So I could say that this is my root value. This is the root value for a node, and that it has a left child and a right child. So I will replicate this as a tree down here, left and right. Here we are. And then if we want to find the left and the right node of the green one, we can go, there's the left of the green, there's the right of the green. And so those become left and right. Down here, And then if we want to find left and right of blue, we go further down. This is I've never actually done this myself, but I believe there is math that you can do on the index of the array to figure out how far into this list do we need to skip ahead to get the left and right children of that one. So let's look this up, like binary tree stored in array. Array representation of binary tree. Did they have a good indication of this? Talk about balanced binary trees, degenerate binary trees. Do they show doing this in an array? Ah, yeah. So we can give a numbering to these nodes. There they go. And so they show this here. So there's always like in a completely filled tree is I think the important thing to note here is that it's not always efficient to store a binary tree in an array because you have these empty nodes, and so therefore you have these empty slots. And so you always have to allocate the memory if you're going to store that binary tree in an array. So generally, I think the mental representation of an array of a binary tree, the way that I think of it, is going to almost always be as an object, uh, like this one. But if, for like, say, if you know that you have a particularly small tree and you want to pre-allocate all the memory uh, and have that memory be contiguous, you can think about each of the spots in a tree as having a position. So this is position 0. They show it 1, 2. Yeah, so it's going sort of each layer. This is position 1. This is position 2. This is 3. This is 4, 5, and 6. And so if we sort of continued this down, the left and right for this one, that next layer down is going to be 6, 7, and 8, and so forth. Yeah, array binary trees, like this is very often with a data structure. So there's two common terms you'll hear is data structure versus abstract data type. And so here, the tree, or really binary tree, is the abstract data type. So abstract data type uh, tells us some rules about the data that we're storing. So the rules about the data that we're storing is that each node has left and right, and say it has optional left and right subnodes. The left subnode is less than the right. I guess that's like a binary search tree. So just like a binary tree actually doesn't. It's just this notion that you have left and right subtrees. It's very often to keep them in. It's often useful to keep them in order so that the left subtree is less than the right subtree, and that'd be a binary search tree. But this idea of that's the abstract data type. It tells us some rules about that data. The data structure is literally how do we store it in memory. And so very often there are two different, or there are many ways of laying out a data type. And so that's the actual structure of the data. Abstract is the idea of a binary tree. Data structure is how do you store it? You can put it in an array. You can keep it as a bunch of linked objects. And then, yeah, there will be different things that you can do because of the way that you store it. You might be able to take advantage of that. Yeah, so the linked list, that we could also represent that much like this. We could make our interface linked list node. Oh, happy to go on a tangent. Uh, where instead of having a left and a right, you always have a next. And so we could make our list value 1 next, value 2 next, value 3. Pretty short linked list. We can go from next to next to next. Yeah. I guess one of the like differences between, say, a linked list and well, I'm going to see what they do with their print linked list here. Yeah. Because I'm going to say current is a linked list node or undefined to make TypeScript happy. But if I was to say print linked list, there it'll print out 1, 2, 2, and 3. The linked list only has its next node. So let's say if I wanted to say, I'm going to ask this to make a function like linked list length. In order to get the linked list length, you actually have to walk through the entire list. So I say linked list length of 3, that is, yeah. So the difference between, say, the JavaScript array and implementing a linked list in JavaScript is that the JavaScript array keeps track of its length. Every time that you call push, pop, or insert something like that, the JavaScript array is keeping track of its length. Whereas the linked list, you actually have to walk through the entire list in order to keep its length. And so that would be the linked list. Kind of looks a lot like, except we just do each node in the linked list just has a pointer to its next. So go next, 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 and then you'd say, my linked list is a pointer to the first item in the list. We would often call that the head of the linked list. I'm not sure. It's not quite like a nested array. It is definitely like it's nested in that you have, at least as I've built it here in JavaScript, you have this object inside of it. You don't have to build it out nested like that. We could say like const item 1 is, say, value 1, and const item 2 and item 3, and then my linked list, I could say list head equals item 1, and I can construct it like this. I have to tell TypeScript that these are linked list nodes. Otherwise, it doesn't like me putting extra properties on them. There we are. So then update all these to use list head instead of list. So you don't have to construct them just like that. Things like if you want to like uh, it's like the linked list abstract data type doesn't immediately like, come with all the same properties of an array either. Like to get the length of it, you have to do this. Yeah, just you don't always have immediate access to the later parts of the linked list, so you have to step through to get to them. Yeah, might be. I'll make a note for myself. I'm kind of a yeah. I need a function to get the length. That's what I'm doing here. Yeah, it's like my linked list node, uh, right? Because when I have a particular node in the linked list, I I don't know how long it is. I don't know how many nexts there are. So we've got to do start with a length of 0 and then see how many times can we call current.next. At some point, we're going to get current.next is nothing. Let's see what happens if I log, say, console.log length current.next. Yeah, so we get when length is, we'll do right before. When length is 0, this much of the linked list is remaining. When length is 1, this much of the linked list is remaining. And when length is 2, this much of the linked list is remaining. We just sort of are stepping into. Yeah, I think that is, when you put it that way, I often do think about it. Yeah, it's sort of like it is stepping into, even though technically there's nothing about them that is necessarily contained. They can just sort of be their own things that just point to each other. But it often has this shape of like this recursive nature. You go kind of stair stepping down. Uh, there was one thing that this one showed. It was an interesting relationship between a linked list and a binary tree. Uh, so I took this binary tree. Did I delete them? Okay, yeah. I took this binary tree and I showed that we could keep the same number of nodes in fewer layers. But there's a particular form of a binary tree that is oh, kind of interesting. So I'm going to keep these arrows sort of. So we can have a binary tree. I'm going to put something over here and let's make it dotted to indicate that there's nothing here. This is an empty node. This is our null. I'll make that font size smaller. All right, I'm just going to make this, leave it there. So we know that this node has nothing on the left side and something on the right side. And if we repeat this pattern, we don't want that, where we have a bunch of like, if we make a tree, but if we only put items on the right side, so right, so this is the showing that we have this tree that has an item null on the left side and a value on the right side. That this is the, this is technically, we intend this to be a binary tree, but this is called a degenerate binary tree. Because it is doesn't have the advantages of a binary tree because it always goes down one side. And in fact, a degenerate binary tree is very much like a linked list. Uh, it has a lot of the same properties as a linked list because you always have pointing to the next. So this is a degenerate, like a binary tree degenerates into a linked list. And so you can have some of those same properties. You have, to get to the end of this binary tree, to get to this node, you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hops, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, it's 7. So you can store these 7 nodes in 7 layers, or you can store the 7 nodes in 3 layers. So that means you have at most 2 steps to get to any node, whereas here you have at most 7 steps to get to any node. Uh, yeah, definitely would recommend reading up, finding more about binary trees and linked lists. I'm starting to take some notes of like, I don't think I'm just going to do 5-hour live streams all the time, but I just want to get started with something. So like the binary tree and linked list might be something I could put a little bit more effort into and do a proper session on those. But so I appreciate you asking. I don't mind at all going off on a tangent like this. But definitely would probably do better with a little bit more preparation. But it's a fun topic. No, that's all right. My internet crashed as well at the end there. Uh, so no problem at all. Happy that you're interested in seeing long, rambling live code sessions. Uh, okay, I'm going to finally take care of this. This DS store. This is some file that the Apple operating system puts on your computer for some reason. So it is very often something that just has to be added to git ignore. So I'm also going to git ignore the scratch file. I'm going to say scratch file already is in git ignore, so let's discard those changes. Yeah. Okay. So adds ds store to git ignore. So I've got to decide what to do today. So I'm going to look at my notes. Got the basics of pagination done. Technically, yeah, we got the category filtering in place. So I'm going to call that, I'm going to say that I'm happy with product categories for the catalog. Let me just check. Oh, that's funny. I committed this. I made my change to git ignore and I committed it to a branch that I didn't really want to commit to. So let's go and do that. So I was on my product categories branch, and I committed this. And I actually wanted, because I was finished that branch, I'd merged it back in. I wanted to do this in main. So I'm going to switch to main. Uh, and I'm going to pull down to synchronize my local main with the main that I got merged in. And then I'm going to cherry pick that one commit that I'd done on the wrong branch over to this branch. Let's see, I might be able to do uh, graph, git graph. I have some sort of graph view. Okay, yeah. Get to a slightly more sensible zoom level. So Git Lens has a graph view, which is showing me history of commits. And so this is showing me that on main, this is where I am here. Uh, main is behind product categories. Uh, and I want to get that one accidental commit that I made into main. But I don't want to get all of these commits because I intentionally squashed down. So this commit is a squash of all of these commits. So I can't just merge the entirety of product categories into main. I just want to get this commit. And that is what cherry pick is good for. So you can actually, let's see, you can do this tool. If I right click, it lets me cherry pick. So I'm going to say cherry pick that commit uh, into main. I'll pick that, runs that cherry pick. And now main includes all of this, which is good. Uh, and then I'm going to say, I don't want to see that branch anymore. I'm done with it. Bad tests, I don't really need to see bad tests either, or my demo branches. So this, I'm just looking at main now, and I've got all those commits. So with a little bit of minor Git surgery done. Oh, and then I'm also going to push that back up. Yeah, cherry picking is to get a specific commit without taking its history. So there, like that commit had a history of parents. And if I just merged that commit, I would have also gotten all of its attached history. Whereas if you just do a cherry pick, you're just going to get only the changes that are part of that commit without getting its whole history. So it can be very useful if you just want a little particular change that happens to be in some stream of work, but you don't want the whole work stream. You just want that one change. Yeah. Uh, so some things on my list of like stuff to do is CSS layout, user registration. Still kind of like just holding off on doing anything with CSS, but I think doing user registration sounds interesting to me. So we're gonna have to do a schema. We have to create the tables. I have to create seed data, and then we're going to need a sign up form and a login form, and then display user info. And I think that's all. Yeah, I think eventually I'm going to do like this. So the question that just came up was, are we going to have, can you, can you buy stuff without being signed up? And I think I will do that. Uh, so it's sort of like a follow-on step to user registration. So we'll do, say, like basic registration, going to be my step one. And then next will be a guest user system. But I think I'm going to go ahead and layer that on and just tackle doing a bare minimum. You know, we want to have the idea of a user, be able to sign them up and log in and have a session, essentially. So we'll have user session in front end. And then once I get all that in place, we'll go and figure out the guest user system. So for somewhere I've got my database. Oh, I think I closed my database diagram. I think I was using DP diagram. Does it remember me? Yes. Uh, Sad. It has deleted my diagram, but I saved it to my create DB called the setup DB. Yeah, I saved all this. Glad I saved it. So I think this is going to be a connected, I mean, not connected yet. So uh, earlier I had put store, like everything to do with product categories and product categories into its own distinct sort of schema or folder for tables. And I think, right, I could do store.users, but I don't want to actually put that in the same folder as all the store information. So I might just call this something like the user scheme. And eventually there could be other stuff in here if I had other user related information. But I'm just going to start making essentially a new folder for data here. Uh, this is going to have an ID, be a primary key. We'll give them, I'm going to go ahead and have a display name. It'll be a string. So this is not null. And an email address should be a string and not null. And we'll have a hashed password, be a string and not null. And then I think the email address is going to have to be unique. This would be, what do we say your name is? Like, hi, Colin. Uh, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it as simple as this. I think with a little bit of speculation, we might be able to guess some other fields that we're going to want, like when we go to add a guest account or an administrator account. We'll want to add things like that. But for now, I'm just going to try and do just as little as I can possibly get away with. And I think display name, email address, and hashed password is going to be enough to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and add these to my notes here. And then because we're in a different scheme here, we're going to replicate this. We're going to say drop schema if exists user. And Copilot, really, really smart, sort of saw this context, figured that out. Also got this by context. This is great. So that will create the users table. So now that I've got the table in place for that, I'm going to go look at my tests, make sure that my tests are still passing. No. Something about syntax error at or near user. That's unexpected to me. Let's see. I'm going to take this query that appears to fail, take it to Postico, and run it here, because I often find that I'll get a little better sense. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think that the trouble here is that user is already a keyword in SQL. Yeah. So because user is already a keyword in SQL, the language, if I want to use it as a schema name, I have to wrap it in quotes. And I don't Love that. Yeah, I could call it users will probably be safe. Yeah, we'll call this users. What is this complaining about now? Schema users does not exist. Oh, so I'm dropping my schemas. I need to create those schemas. I'm going to move this to be inside of here because I didn't see it immediately. So I'm going to say create schema store and then create schema user, just so it's really obvious that I have to do both parts in here because I forgot. And if I forgot now, I'll probably forget again later. Okay. So something has gone wrong here, and that these tests have failed. Which is confusing to me because the tests passed remotely. So on GitHub, this says that they passed, but on my machine, they're showing as failing. So I'm going to do git log 40E4BBC. 40E4BBC, that shows as passing. And check out our status. This is the only difference we have. Let me just run those tests again. Is this the test one? Yeah, here are tests. All right, I'm guessing there's something to do with like when I did a git checkout and switched between branches, my test runner like cached old version of some file and was getting thrown off there. But that's all right as long as the tests are passing now. I'm happy with it. Uh, so what were we? I got thrown off by that. Oh yeah, we have finished one of our steps. So let's say that we've got the schema. We built that. We put our tables in place. Well, we did that. I'm going to create some seed data. I'm going to be happy to do this all as one group. There's one item I forgot to do, which is that after I create the tables, I want to generate TypeScript types with Cannel. So let's do the TypeScript generation. And so that was this one, npx cannel config. And then let's look at the diff. So this did not create a type definition for user. And that's because I did not run that on shopping cart dev. So shopping cart test has the users table, but shopping cart dev, I haven't actually run that yet. And so shopping cart dev doesn't have all of my tables yet. So I'm going to have to run reset DB to get it to put those tables in the shopping cart dev database. So now we go back, look at shopping cart dev. We have the store data and we have a users table. So now I can run DB reset. And then I can run this one to generate the type data. And now my types folder has type definitions for the users table. Fantastic. I am going to take these together as a commit. So I will add these together. So this commit creates a users schema and table with types. I feel like because I'm getting behind myself. So I'm gonna make a branch for this. So I'm actually gonna do what I just committed that. I don't want to commit this on main yet. I want to make a feature branch for registration. So my current local main is ahead of it. So I'm going to do a soft reset. So I want to get rid of that commit, but I want to keep the code. So I'm going to git reset soft. So I'm going to go back to that point. If I do git log now, the commit is gone, but I still have the code changes here. So they're still staged. Then I can do git switch. I'll create a new, let's say, user registration. And now I can commit these. So let's say adds user table and type definitions. Cool. And then if I go and look at the graph view, now we'll see that I've got, I still have a linear history because uh, I haven't made any differences to main, but now I'm showing that user registration is one commit ahead of main. Uh, and so I'll do a similar path here where I'm going to do a series of commits on this branch, make a pull request, and then squash in. I think yesterday I said maybe I won't do this so much, but I feel like I'm on a feature. I'm going to develop it like a feature. So we've got TypeScript types, and now I want to create seed data. So I've got my seed file, and I feel like this is starting to get maybe kind of big, and I'd like some organization. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to extract them. So I'm going to extract to function in module scope, and we'll call this seed products. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to move this along with that to a new file. I've got seed products in its own file, and I will make seed users in its own file. I'm going to make a folder in here. I'm going to call that seeds, and I'm going to move seed products into there. And then this is where I'll make a new seed users. But I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to commit this as well as a single commit just to make it pretty tidy. So we'll add this, and it's going to be move seed data into separate files. I'll make, oh, don't need a folder there. I want a new file, the seed users. Look at seed products. Yeah. Okay, so I've got this. I want to have a similar environment thing to say how many users. We'll say const seed user count. Copilot got that worked out. I probably don't need 100 users, so I'm going to have 10 as the default. And I was also putting these seed counts. We'll say seed user count equals 10 in the example file. And then I'll put mine. That's fine. Seed user. Okay, seed user. We will do export function, export async function seed users. Oh, mixing my arrow function and regular function syntax. And I'm going to need to, let's see, this looks pretty good. So I'm going to need exec query. I need to import Faker. Okay, but that's not how, let's see, Faker dot person dot name. Name is not a thing. What options do I have in the person module? First name, last name, middle name, full name. I wonder if they have one that's like for creating like display names, like usernames that someone might create. So you have person, internet module, avatar, like email addresses. Just wondering like if they have, because people like to make usernames that aren't like names, but they have internet.username. Yeah, that creates names that are sort of like more like what someone might put in if they're having to put in just a simple name. But I guess this is display name, so it can be a full name. I don't know what I'm thinking. That's just sort of a nice thing to present. And then we get email. I am curious to know what type of data is this going to generate for us? Uh, yeah, Faker is just a library. So a lot of languages will have an implementation of something that does something like this, and a lot of them will call it Faker. I know that there's like a Faker for Ruby, probably a Faker for Python. So, but generally, it's such a common need to be able to generate plausible looking fake data that this is not uncommon. Next, what I'm about to do is we're going to require Faker.js, Faker, uh, and I want to see what kind of email addresses do we get. Okay. Faker Internet. Does this work? We import Faker from Faker Faker. Okay. Here we go. Faker. Trying to Faker Internet email. So, what I don't want to do is I don't want to have email addresses that are too realistic because this email address could conceivably exist. This email address could conceivably exist. And so if I start creating test data that has conceivably real email addresses, I or somebody else later down the line might actually try to send email to these addresses. Uh, and that could be, it's essentially spam at that point. It's accidental spam, but we don't want to do it. So when using test data, it looks like they have a function called example email, and this is what I want to do for test data. Unless I'm specifically testing something that wants to actually like use the domain name and verify it in some way, I generally want to use email addresses at example.org. And example.org is a website that exists specifically for being used in examples. So example.org is just the example website. So if I want to use tests, it's always going to be safe to use email addresses at example.org because no one's going to get upset if I accidentally try to send an email to an example email address. Whereas here, it's quite possible that we would have accidentally, you know, sent a weird email to Donkey Teal and might have upset them. So I'll always be using example.org email addresses when I need to make something like this. So I'm going to use example email. Okay, password is deprecated. This is also interesting because I don't want to just put a password into it. If we look at Faker internet password, these I don't think these are hashed passwords. These are just supposed to be like very secure ones, but they're not the actual hashed password. So I want to figure out a way to store an actual hashed password here. So I'm going to look up, and I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do my password hashing. So we're going to do Node.js password hashing. So I could use bcrypt, or this is where I think there's a newer thing in that newer versions of Node include a crypto module. Yeah. So you can use their built-in password hasher. So I'm going to take a quick look at this. So they create a salt, create a hash. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Node.js crypto module docs and see, do they have any examples here? Do they have scrypt, pbkd, f2? I don't really know which is the best to use. Scrypt is a password key-based key derivation function that is designed to be expensive computationally and memory-wise in order to make brute force attacks unrewarding. The salt should be as unique as possible, 16 bytes long. Caveats when using strings as inputs. Consider using string normalize. All right, it's interesting to bear in mind. I guess the question is, do I want to use scrypt or do I want to use, where was it? that PBK df2 don't know. So I'm going to do a search, see if anybody can tell me anything about this versus script. What is the difference? Well, here's someone who's giving an authoritative sounding response. I don't know if they actually have any idea what they're talking about. This is 11 years ago. Because PBKDF2 is worse than bcrypt. Scrypt is better than bcrypt. Person suggest is this. So I don't know. How does one stay up to date on this stuff? I don't know, by reading 11-year-old forum threads. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use scrypt, or because it's built in. I'm going to search up just a little bit more, see if anybody says anything about scrypt versus bcrypt. Let's see, this says scrypt is weaker than bcrypt for memory requirements. Scrypt requires approximately 1,000 times the memory of bcrypt to achieve a comparable level of defense against GPU-based attacks or password storage. Let's see. On the other hand, this says use scrypt. Why you shouldn't be using bcrypt in scrypt. This is why should we not? Scrypt and bcrypt are solutions built on a faulty premise. People want to feel safe. Here's a problem. So the problem is they waste resources. Okay, well that's not necessarily like I want to check your password and I want something that's all right. So yes, if someone tried to log in a lot, that could create extra load on the system. But what I don't, this seems like a crank opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and for now, I'm going to use scrypt for a combination of reasons. One is that it's built into Node, so I don't have to go and get a module. I'm happy to use something that's built in, and it seems to have the more important parts of password storage worked out, which is that you want something that is relatively expensive to check, so you can limit the speed at which someone can try to hack or like guess a bunch of passwords. Uh, so let's look for a script. I'm going to go with the default. So I'm going to need a salt and a password. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some tests in my Scratch file. So we'll do, oh, why can't I type here? Here we are. Very confusing. Import TypeScript from node cryptography. And I guess I'll get random bytes as well. Don't know why I need two imports for that. And I'm gonna make a random salt. I think this said random salt should be 16 bytes long at the least. So got 16. And I need a password. So I'll make a very insecure password. And then I will hash it. And we'll do console log derived key. And I want to see the output for this. So we're going to do start on current file. So that looks like a good, nice derived key. And then I want to, so that's an example for, yeah, so this is what I want to do. I want to have, I need to go and update my users table because I need to store this salt per user because this is roughly analogous to the like register. So we're going to generate a random salt. So this is server generates random salt. And then the user provides password. And then server combines password plus salt to create hash. So that's on the registration side of things. And then on the login side of things, it's going to be user provides password, server loads salt from database, server combines password and salt to create a hash, and server compares hash to the hash in the database. So, we're going to say server stores salt plus hash, salt and hash in database. So I need a separate field to store the hash. I could do something like try to store them both in the same field, but I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to store them in separate fields. So I'm going to go back to the setup DB, and I'm going to modify my users table. We'll modify our notes too. So we're going to say we have a salt, which is a non-null string, and a hash password, which is a string. Now, these might not actually be strings. This was something about the caveats that this said, caveats in using strings as inputs to cryptographic APIs. So this scratch file, you know, I converted the derived key to hex, but the actual thing that you get out is a buffer. And a buffer, I'll make this a little bit smaller. So I'm getting a 64 byte buffer. I'll make it smaller so we can see it. So a buffer is raw bytes. And usually bytes can be displayed as a string. I don't necessarily have to convert this into a string. I believe I should be able to store this as bytes in the database. So Postgres has a a way to store binary data types. So you can store byte arrays without having to have them be converted back and forth to strings. And so because I'm getting byte arrays and this wants me to use byte arrays, I think I'm going to try just using byte arrays. Yeah. And so that means that in my database setup, I actually want the byte array data type. And we'll do a salt, which will be a byte array data type. And then let's see what happens. I'm going to have to, so the tests are unhappy. Byte array does not exist. Oh, Bayeta does not exist. All right, so that test still passes. And if I go and look in Postico and look at the structure, I have to run this again. I have to reset DB for you. And if we look at the dev database, now this is a byte array. So I'm going to go, and I think after that, I also have to do generate my types. Okay, so this generator doesn't know what to do with a byte array type. I wonder what did it put in here. Okay, so it's going to call those unknown. That's fine by me for a second. I think there is a way to tell it what the actual type is, because like I really like it to do, this is a buffer. But I'll deal with unknown for a second, and we'll come back to this later. So now those columns are the type that I want. Update this note. Byte array, byte array. And then where were we? Oh, yes, we were getting into seed users. So yeah, I don't want this to be a password. I want the hashed password and I want the salt to be stored. But I'm going to generate bytes. So I'm going to say for every I'm going to give all of these users the same password to make this simpler later if I ever have to log in as them. So we'll do let password equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then salt will be, I don't want to use Faker to make the salt. I want to use Node Crypto to make the salt. We'll say import random bytes from Node Crypto. So the salt will be 16 random bytes. And the hashed password will be what is this type error? Expected 4 to 5 arguments, but got 3. I was doing this in the scratch, yeah, because we get this. Is there a promise version of a script? Click to show 2 definitions. That's not happening. I'm clicking. I'm not seeing the other definitions. I want to see the other definitions. I'm going to go to okay, so these do not have promise, which means I can't do async await, but there is a handy thing. So this form here, which takes a callback with error first, which might be null, and then the value that you get, you can promisify these. So there is a function called promisify in the node utilities, and I will say const script promise equals promisify script. And now this converts it from a function that takes a callback, error and derived key, into a function that does a promise. So I can do script promise. And I don't want size to be 8. I'm going to say I want size to be 64. And then here I'm going to use the hashed password and the salt. So this should create a bunch of data. So let's go ahead and do a reset DB and see what this puts in our database. It put nothing in our database because we aren't calling it. There we go. Now let's see what this puts in our database. Bind message supplies 4, but prepared statement requires 3. That is because I put $3 in there twice. Let's go $4. One more time. Okay, so this stored some buffers. Yeah, now we got the hashed password is 64 bytes of binary data, and the salt is 16 bytes of binary data. And that is, it just is what it is. It's not a string, so it's not even going to be represented. It's just raw binary data. So that's what I was wanting to have happen. There's an interesting thing here, which is that the display name doesn't really match the email address so well. So I think I can deal with that here, make some slightly nicer seed data. So I'll say let first name equal Faker first name, last name is last name. Oh, but this is Faker. It's person. And then just example email. Yeah, it takes first name and last name options. So we will give this first name, last name, and the full name also takes in first name and last name. We can get consistency between those. Not strictly necessary, but it is kind of nice to have that put together. This isn't like a completely exhaustive uh, set of all the types of names that you could have because not everybody has a first name and a last name. Uh, that's why in the database I'm just storing it as a display name rather than as separate names because you can get super wrong about the way that names actually work. Uh, and that the idea of having a set sequence or first and last name pairing is not always true. One last thing I'm noticing is I've set all these as let, and I like to be pretty strict about only using let if it's going to be something that I am going to change. So I'm going to make those constants because I'm not reassigning them. Okay, so this is changed. what did we change? Okay, so this was, we created seed data for users. And oh, there's one last thing to take care of here, which is that we still have these as unknown. But we know that they're not unknown. We know that these are buffers. So let's go to, I think the way we deal with this is we go to, oh, we've got so many files. Let's go to the camel configuration file. And I believe I can give custom types. So let's do camel custom types. Column type output. Look at the documentation for this and see what they say. Documentation here. Configuring. Type map. Type filter. Custom type map. There we go. So I can say input type becomes output type. And when I ran Canel before, this said can't resolve type PG catalog byte A referenced in users.salt. And that's what this is showing here. So I'll make a custom type map. And this will be, look at this, PG catalog byte array. We want that to be a buffer. We'll run our, and there, now it doesn't have that complaint. And if we look at the user schema, now it knows those are going to come back as buffers. So that is what I want. So let's see. Okay, I see an issue here that I thought I had my scratch file in gitignore, but it keeps showing up here when I make changes to it. What is in gitignore, but I think at issue is that it is, it got added to Git at some point. So I actually have to remove it from Git in order to have it properly be ignored. I'll deal with that later. I like this. I added this commit adds custom type map for Canel to under custom type map for byte arrays as buffers for Canel. And then the rest of this really is about, oh, I wanted to get this one in there as well. So I'll stage that. I want this to be part of this commit. So I can do an amend, git commit amend, use the same message to tell it that it's the message. I need two S's in message. Okay. Then the rest of these are about, did seed products change? Oh, because some stuff moved around. That's fine by me. And so these four are about seed users table. This commit adds a seed script to populate users table. And I need that one again, so I'm gonna have to do the same amend operation. going to get the same message. That's added, git commit, amend message, same message. All right. Go back and look at that to do. I've created seed data. So now I want a sign up form and a login form. So this is good spot to be in because I get to go back to living with my tests, which I like to live with my tests. So let's go to the app. I want the app TSX file. Save the to do and close that. So I am going to do registration first. Why not? So let's go route path equals register. We'll have an element equals register, which I haven't created yet. So I'll go out to my pages and I will make a register page. Get the feeling this page is going to get pretty cluttered pretty quick, but I'll just deal with that later. Register TSX would be export const register. And we'll return, here we are, Copilot. Register, this seems good to start. And I will want a test file for this. We'll do register test. I could fix that import here. So let's go to, I'm going to go to the app test because I do have a new route. So I'll put this in place. It's going to be the register route. Renders the register page. Syntax. Here we go. I want to make sure I like to see my tests fail at least once. Make sure they're not passing for reasons unknown. So yeah, if you if you go to the route register, you're at least going to see the text register. It's good for me for now. And then the actual register test, let's go and const, let's describe register. It renders the register page. So we got to import render from testing library. Got to import register. How are we getting screen in this test? So screen is all this from testing library React. So I want that as well. Okay. So renders the register page. So what I expect to be able to do on the register page is, this idea is that we want to test the way, we want to write our test code that mirrors the way our users will use the application. So user is going to visit, they're going to look at the register component, and they're going to fill in a username. I'm going to go look at the testing library React, fill in input. Input event. change. So we can do fire event change. If you want to simulate a more natural typing behavioral test your component, consider the companion library user event. That is what I do want to do. So I want to use user event. So I believe that is something I've got to install. We'll do npm install save dev user event. Excellent. User event setup, and then await some action. So I don't just want to click keyboard. Oh, pointer. Convenience APIs. Yeah, you can do click. So what I want to simulate, so we'll get import. What do they do? User event setup. So we'll import user event from user event. So we'll do user event setup. We'll have to import that. Where do they import it from? Oh, what did I just install if I don't need to install this? Oh, what is user event? Well, that's theirs is prefixed. Oh, it got moved. Okay, that's fine. I just don't need that one. So we'll do npm uninstall user event and npm install. I didn't even look at that output. They were saying they told me what to do. So we'll do npm install testing library user event. So now I should have the appropriate library. We'll say they do user is user event setup. And then we can do, so I think the first thing the user is going to do is they're going to click on an input. So we're going to say we're going to click on input name will be display name. We'll wait. And then they will await user dot type. As user event type takes. Okay, user event convenience APIs. They don't show type. Utility APIs. Type. Okay, so I don't have to click on it manually first. I can just do type. So we're going to say user is going to type. We'll say the test username. Another thing, I always like to, when I am coming up with test values, uh, say this is not a test username, this is a test display name. I really like to really telegraph, broadcast, make it really clear that it's a test value. So I could come up with or like do something like I can put my name here, or someone else's name, uh, or I could do like James Bond for fun. Uh, but the longer I've done it, the more I've just taken to appreciate like just kind of making it kind of robotic. Uh, and so if I ever look at this outside of this test, like if it shows up in a database or somewhere else, it's going to be really clear to me that this was intended to be a test display name. Uh, so we can type that in there. So I need to also type in an email address that we'll call test@example.org. And then I've got to do password. I like calling that test password. Uh, so this is not just renders the register page, but this is going to, I guess I'll do the happy path first. I'll just say like it takes user registration. So user comes in, types in display name, email, password. I should probably do a password confirmation field. Yep. And Copilot thought so too. Yeah, then we're going to want to click the register button. Then we'll wait for, I think I will, well, just for simple, for starters, we will do screen screen.get by text registration successful. So let's see. All right, so there's a lot of tests here. I can do, so this is a really nice thing about a tool like vtest. Down here it's saying, hey, press H to show help. So I'm going to do that. And it says, hey, you can, if you press A, you'll run all the tests. You can run just the failed tests. You can do filtering. So you can filter by file name. So I'm going to press P. And I would say, give it some part of this file name. And now it's just going to run. If I press enter to rerun, it's it should be filtering down to just that file. So this is good. So it is, yeah, unable to find an element with role input and display name. So I've got to go and actually start building out this component. Let's do that. I'm going to make a form, and I've got a display name and its input. Oh, this is Copilot. Taking care of me so well. Look at that. Well, let's see, how far does this go? So this is saying unable to find accessible element with role input in the name display name, which is I feel like this input has that, so I'm gonna try to figure out why this can't find it. It does not have ARIA label. Well, it's got a label. Do I need a label? No, it's a different library. Okay, so I think the input needs to have aria label display name. Let's see what that does. No. Let's go to the registration page. Oh, localhost. If I go to register, do you have elements? Do you have an input? Hmm. Why is it not accessible to that testing tool? I wonder, is it, this is interesting. Oop. I think it might be because the label element is uppercase. No, that was not the case. Put the input type label or name is display name. Hmm. Testing library element error, unable to find accessible element role input and name. Let's go look at testing library by role or by label text. So there they're showing using aria labeled by, but this is using HTML4 username input. Could try get by label text. Let me try that. So they're showing label for that ID is display name. So we'll say label for display name, and we'll do get screen.get by label text display name. Okay, that did it. So I'm comfortable with this. We'll do screen get by label text email. That one works. So I'm going to keep doing it this way. So we'll go by the label text. This is good. I think sort of this definitely fits in the philosophy of testing library, which is test the system like your user is going to use it. So the way the user is going to use it is they're going to look for the label and then type into the input next to it. So this seems pretty good. Okay. Unable to find an element with the text, registration successful. This is good. This returns a promise. So I have to await the click event. This makes sense to me because I'm not doing anything in response to that. You can submit this form all you want, but nothing is ever going to happen. So just to sort of make sure that my test loop is working, I'm going to kind of fake things out a bit. I'm going to say const registered set registered is false. Take that from state. And then down here, we'll say, if you've registered, we're going to say that you have registered. And then we're going to do on submit of this form, going to prevent default and set registered to true. And so that works. So now what I want to do is when you submit this form, do something else. So let's see, can I make this an async event without any problems? Async function? Yep, I can do that. So now we're going to do some fetching. So I'll do fetch API register is going to be a post event. Headers, we're going to send JSON data. That is great. And we're going to send information there. Yes, I don't really need to send the password confirm all the way out to the server. That's really just like a front end convenience. So I'm going to not send that. This is interesting. That's taking event.target as any. I guess because it doesn't. See what I think about dealing with that later. But for now, I'm going to see what happens. Okay, yeah, .display name .value. So these fields don't exist. So I want to do. I want to see what's going on. So do console log event target to see what's going on there. So it is a React form. Click in there, console output. Console Ninja is so good. But I want to get access to these inputs. So I have them with IDs, so I could do something like event target query selector, and I can get them by ID. But this is event target is not. Doesn't give me access to that. Let's see if I do. And claim it's an any. I don't really think I should do, but I'd like to see how far we can get. Okay, so that got us the display name. So I'm not going to end up with this, but I'm just kind of trying to go step by step and see what I can get. Okay, being failed to parse URL from API register. So I'm going to pull this out and say const payload equals that, because I want to log the payload and see what I would be sending here. Okay, so this will be the correct information. I don't love the way that I'm doing this. There's a couple things I don't like about this. I'm claiming that this is an any. I'm using query selector, which feels maybe a little bit weird here, but uh, it works for now. So I'm going to put a little to do here. Let me figure out a better way to get field values. But I'm getting the field values I want for now, so I'm going to leave that as is. And the problem I get here is invalid URL API register. And if I go and look at the catalog, I have to get access to my full URL here. So I'll do that. And there, connection refused. Oh yeah, this is something that was going on in the catalog test. Yeah, I'm starting my test server and creating my test data in the catalog test. But now this is something that I actually want to do this for all tests. So I need to move this out of the catalog test file and find a better place to put that. So I got my global test set up. And I guess let's see what happens if I put this in there. We'll have to fix some imports. There's imports in here. Let's just see if this will. I can get add missing imports. Add all missing imports. Thank you. And then save catalog file. And then save the register test file to see what this does. I need to restart this because I moved a bunch of stuff around. No. So I can't use before all in this test setup file. But if I go to my vtest, I've got global setup and I've got setup files. Yeah. So I can do setup tests and it can take, I'll make a new file here called setup tests. And I'll take these before all and I'll move them into setup tests. And so I don't need these in there, but I do need them in here. And then I need my test port in here. So now mm, so yeah, the problem here is I think this setup tests, this has access to everything that I want, but or it has access to the before all, but it actually runs this file before every test. So it's trying to like do things twice that it actually can't do twice. So I think I didn't want this file. I think I wanted it in here. I think I just didn't realize that I don't need before all wrapping these. I think these are just already going to do, this is already going to happen before all. So I didn't need, gotta be async. Do promise of void. Yeah, so this was complaining because I'm not resolving a value, but I can tell it there is no value. You don't have to wait for one. But I think this works. It was just that the before all wasn't available in this particular type of setup file. And then this type of setup file I don't want because it's actually going to run this once before each test. And I only want to set up my test data and start my test server once. Uh, so, at least I think that's true. I haven't actually confirmed it yet. I don't need the setup files. And let's try one more time. There we go. That's what I wanted. So it sets everything up, runs those tests, and then this particular test did not fail. Found multiple elements with the text register. Don't love that. Oh, oh, because there's an H1 and a button with the register. So I'm gonna have to go update that code to deal with the button itself. But got through that little wrinkle. We're gonna say, oh, it was a different test failed. The test that failed was the app test because it found multiple things. Okay, I guess I can fix that quick. App test register should be role is heading. Yeah, no. So get by text, selector matcher options, selector ignore. Okay, so now we need to do get by role. We'll try screen get by role, heading, text, register. Well, what properties do you know about? Get by role. We're going to go to the actual docs for this. Get by role. Which query should I use? Get by role, by their name. All right, maybe I could do heading. Name is register. Does it take the text as the name? Yes. Awesome. Uh, so that no longer conflicts. And then I can go over here, ask for help. I want to filter by file name. And I only want to run the register tests. Okay. Takes user registration. This seems, I don't expect this should be finished yet. Oh yeah, no problem if you gotta go. I'm just having a ball. Appreciate you being here. It's fun to have questions. Uh, what am I dealing with? Okay, so I've got this fetch. Probably need to be doing some like try and oh, try, await, fetch, catch error. Yeah, there's an error registering user if we get that problem. So let's see if this. No, I'm wildly surprised that this claims to work. Takes user registration. What on earth? So say const response equals await fetch, and we'll do result, and we'll log the result. Oh, we got error registering user. Ah, that's because this always happens. So I'm going to put my set registered there. Okay, so we've got an error. We are not successfully registering. That is fantastic. And then let's see if we can log more information about this error. Error registering user. Doc type is not valid JSON. Yeah, so I think the probably got like error dot status or error dot code. Oh, that's because we are doing this. We want to say if not response dot okay. Yeah. So so if we have non okay response, we want to do something a little different. So I'm going to do look at the response status and the response status text. That's what I'm expecting to see because we have not generated that route yet. We've got a 404. So now I've got to go to the app file. And this is definitely starting to get to be, I'm starting to make other routes. So I'm going to make a router so I can split this off. So I'll make an API folder, make an index file, and I'll make a catalog file. And we're about to make a register. I'll call this user file. So we're going to need the import router from Express. And we'll do const API router equals, I got a new router? No, it's just a router. And then we'll export API router. So I'll just do export in one line. And we'll go to the app. And we'll do app use API router. get that imported from there. I'm going to take the catalog routes and move those into the catalog file. And I will call this, I need to create another router from Express. Call this const catalog router. We'll do catalog router get products and catalog router get categories. Gonna need to add all my missing imports. Gotta get the pagination scheme. Gotta add import from Zod. That's looking good. And delete all these unused imports in this file. I don't want JS, I want TypeScript. So we'll do API router use catalog router. It's a cute way to do that, but I am going to did I not export? Yeah, I want to export catalog router there. And then the user file's got to do a similar thing. So I'll import router from Express. We'll make a user router. That works for me. We'll say API router use user, but we want to put the user router in there. And then I need to go out to my app and say that actually the API router is prefixed with API. So that should put my routes in place. I want to make sure that all of this, I didn't break everything else. So I'm going to tap A over here to run my tests. And so this is great. I just refactored all of my routes. Pretty big change, but my tests are telling me nothing broke. The register is still broken, but that was broken before. So I have confidence that I can go back to filter to the register tests only, and I didn't break everything else. So if I go back to close catalog, user, index, got the register test and the register component. It's not API register. I just changed that to be API user register. And this is still going to be a 404. But that is fine. The thing that I want to do is actually create that route. So I'll go to, what am I looking for? Don't care about catalog anymore. I want user TS, and we'll say user router post register. We want to trap async errors. I call that catch async errors. And I'm just going to do res.send registered. And I need matching parentheses there. Now if we go update that file, unable to find registration successful. So this is claiming not found. I'm doing a post to API user register. That is what it seems like I've put my route at. So let's see, we've got user register. It's set as a post. Can you do an end? Still hitting a 404. Now let's make sure that URL is correct. Looks right. I'm gonna restart my server in case something's a little. Okay. So I think I've got some sense of what is going wrong here. That I thought my tests were working, but I think they're not. So I think this has to do with where I put my test setup code. In that I think because now essentially my server is not restarting. So I think I've got to go to my test setup. Sorry, I need just a second. I am to respond to a message. Okay, let me make sure my sound is still coming through. Looks like it is. All right, so the issue that I've got here is that when I moved this test setup code here, it's not reloading my server when I make changes to the server. This, it turns out, is not where I want this code to be. So what do I want to do? I want to go to my vconfig, setup files, and after end is not a thing. Let's do setup files, go to setup tests. So I do need to make a file here. Okay, so this is tricky because this is going to be something that runs. This is a downside of actually running my server and connecting to it over HTTP. Is that I've got to, I might want to run tests in parallel or something. So I'll leave this empty for a moment. So what I think I want to do is I want to do a mock server, but I want my mock server to actually connect to my real server, but not do so over HTTP. Just be able to call it directly. So let's see if we can do this. So I know I like using mock service worker, and let's see if we can get mock service worker to talk to Express. So what do they say about Express? You can use the setup server API mock service worker from any Node application, for example, when developing or testing an Express server. So how can I get this? Mock service worker use Express app. Spawn an Express server from your mock service worker and apply them to an existing server using a middleware. This might be it. Declare request handlers. It seems like the opposite of what I want to do. You should always prefer using mock service worker for API mocking because you can meet most of your requirements without having to spawn and maintain an actual HTTP server. Uh, but I want to not mock. I want to integration test, but I want to on HTTP for mock service worker. Yeah, so this is the opposite of what I want. This is saying you've created some mocks and you'd like to create a real server from the mocks. But I want the reverse. I want to take my mock server and have it forward everything to a real server without actually going over HTTP. I just want it to call my actual server directly. Maybe that's not as hard as I think it is. Direct usage says request, response, and context. Do some things with context. How does mock service worker actually work? Setup worker. They do setup server. Where is setup server? Set up server. Set up server API. What do? You create interceptors. When you get a request, you make a mocked request. You get a response. Let's say mock service worker forward to Express app. Ability to capture mock inbound requests in Node. Mock service worker adopts a brand new request interception algorithm for Node. Global request client equals mock request client. Okay. Request interception in Node. How do you do it? Node client request. Interesting. Doesn't tell me exactly what to do yet. Using mock service worker with vtest. Feels like the kind of thing where if I said that I wanted to do this, someone would say like, "Why would you want to do that?" But I'm like, I do want to do this. Uh, like I know what I want to do because it's not the way you think things should be done. But I want to convert an Express server. Okay, so we've got REST. They have get, post, put, delete, patch, and options. They don't have an all. They do have rest.all. Intercept any REST API request to a given path regardless of its method. Okay. This could be my way to catch all those requests. Okay. This is the request matching. Let's see how request matching. Rest.star. So I can say all localhost 3000 star to match everything. Don't need to transform anything. So I can do that. So I can catch the requests. Now, how do I send them into Express? Let's say Express.js route request manually. How can I trigger a route handler manually? Yeah, like I want to dispatch. I want to dispatch without it being run. Okay, there's something called run middleware. App router handle. Express 416. Well, can I do app.handle? That's interesting. Let's go to my Scratch file and let's make import Express from Express. And let's do uh, const app equals app. App equals express to app dot get hello. Send hello world app dot handle. App dot handle is not a thing, but was it in router? Router from express, and let's do uh, const routes equals router. Routes get anything. Hello world. We do routes dot handle. No. So built in, there's no way to. So a router, the core router extends interface router. So I can do a lot of things, but it doesn't look like I can call it directly unless that is part of request handler. Okay. So request handler, this is a function? Oh, dang. So this is a request. Play const request equals new request. Like request and response. Can I make a request? No. How do I make an express request? Interface extends core request. I'm curious, how does supertest do this? They fake this stuff out. And if I wanted to, I could just use supertest, which would be absurd. Be a super agent. This is not. Yeah, super agent isn't part of Express at all. But I can look at the library. Maybe it's not so absurd to like Frankenstein together. This is wild. How does this work? It takes in an app, this dot app, extends request from super agent. Super agent takes an app. Maybe I can use super agent. Super agent, how are you doing this stuff? Usage. So confused. So super test. Request comes from super agent. Okay. Okay, so let's look at super agent and look at their request class. Request base. Where is what? Request doesn't allow manipulations. Let's say super agent express app. Oh, but I'm curious. How are they doing this? They're using super agent request app post. Okay, so I think I can use super agent directly. I can combine super agent with mock service worker and have a crazy old time. I think I'm going to do this. So mock service worker will get in the way of all requests, and then super agent is what I'll use in there to forward requests into my application. So let's do this. We'll do npm install d mock service worker and super agent. Oh, I've got these now, so I want to figure out how to install super agent or mock service worker. Got mock service worker installed. Getting started on mock REST API. Got my handlers. Integrate into node. Setup server. Okay. I wonder, should I be using MSW browser because technically I'm using the front end. So let's do setup worker and see if this works. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do this in my test setup, global test setup, and say import something from MSW. Integrate browser. I'm doing this in Node, so I'm going to try mocks browser setup worker. Okay, so we'll do import setup worker from MSW, just from MSW. And then we'll go setup worker with handlers. install define mocks rest. We'll do import setup worker and rest from mock service worker. And my handlers will be an array. Do rest dot all localhost API star. Yeah. And then we will return response context JSON mocked. And what is going on here? Handlers in as an array. Do rest.all. Do we need to like post? No, that still doesn't work. Mhm. That looks correct. Doesn't like that as an array, likes it like that. Okay. So I don't want to start my server now. There we are. I was missing parentheses there. Let's see. Failed to execute setup worker in a non-browser. So I've got to use, even though I'm testing in a browser, I've got to do setup server from MSW node. I've got to import REST from MSW. And I've got to do setup server. Okay, I'm expecting errors, but I'm curious for what reason am I getting errors? So it looks like I'm getting fetch failed, connection refused. But why? I think because I have this global setup in the wrong place. I'm going to move this to there and go to my setup test, and we will say, try this in setup test. See what happens this way. All right, so getting connection refused. I wonder, is setup server truly intercepting fetch? All right, so I want to get a simple test in place here that will just do everything for me. We'll do fetch test TS. We'll do it dot only tests fetching. Async. We'll do const response equals await fetch API test const data is response JSON. Expect message to be mocked. Okay, so we're not connecting here, but I'm going to move my setup test into here because I just really want to get some isolation going on. So we'll say import these things, const server equals that, and what can I do with this server? We can listen. Listen is void, and then at the end, can I server dot close? And now let's see what happens here. Do please run the fetch test only. Okay, this is working. So I think it was that I had failed to listen. Save fetch file. Yeah, if you don't listen, the test won't run. If you do listen, the test will run. So I'm going to do, because I want to really validate that this works at all. So I'll say import express from express, say app equals express, app.get API test, say hello world. We're going to expect hello world for our message. And then we'll save this, get the expected failure. Did I install Super Agent yet? Yes, I have Super Agent. So then we will, how did I see someone was doing this with Super Agent? You just ask for it. So we'll say import, what are they getting? Request from Super Agent, which I'm going to want types for, because that's how I roll. Excellent. So then in here, I can say request app dot, I got to figure out what type of request I'm making in Super Agent. Let's see, usage. Now do on request basics. Okay. But for now, I'm just going to, oh no, your super agent has changed, so you can't do this anymore. That's fine. npm uninstall super agent and types super agent. I'm just going to go ahead and install super test. I'm guessing at some point maybe this particular capability of super agent was extracted out to super test. So we'll do request app dot request. Can do dot fetch. Can I do fetch? Yeah, what methods do I get out of you? So we get back a super test. And super test, send super agent. We can do specific methods. Can I just do any old type of request without knowing what method I want to use? It's like maybe not, but I'm just gonna, so we're gonna do request app get API test. We'll do result body. Expect mock to be hello world. We're getting close. Hey, yeah. Where is mocked coming from? It wouldn't be setup tests. There's nothing in setup tests now. There's global test setup, which is not loading in mock service worker. Do I need... Yeah, where is mocked coming from? Mocked is nowhere to be found. There we go. So I want to filter down to fetch test. And I just got a casing issue. So that is looking good. Expect hello world to be hello world. What is going on here? Console log. Look at the request. I think I'm saving this file. Doesn't R to rerun current tests. Okay. I don't know what's going on with saving there. But I've got URL. We got method is get. Let's look at request.method.to lowercase. That's the method. Okay. And then let's log URL. Let's see, do I have URL dot path name? And let's see what's going on there. API test. So we will do request method And we will pass in request URL path name. And I'll see what happens here. Well, I've got to do to lowercase because they're coming through uppercase. So that works. And I want to, let's try a post here. We'll do method post and body message will be hello server. And I want the server to respond hello server. Way too many. Parentheses. There we go. And this should fail because it's not going to say hello server, but I want to send the body forward. So this should be, we're just going to res.send request.body. And we're going to use app.use express.json. I'm going to pass the body right back through. This should fail. So we got undefined back. So we want to send request.body. Body is cool. I'll send request.arrayBuffer. Why not? Don't care what it is. That is an ID. So we're going to spool the whole thing in and then forward it along. Still not getting anything. What if we do await request JSON? I'm going to log this out. Console log await request JSON. Let's see, what are we actually sending? Okay, got a message there. They're sending it. So what is request body here? What are you? You are not executing. We're doing request method to lowercase request.url path name and the JSON body. So post API test, there we go. I just didn't update this to be a post. You still wish to intercept this unhandled request. It's unhandled because fetch with a post. Post API test. That error field. Oh, I can't read the body twice. I don't, that's fine. I don't need to look at it. Aha. Now, can I do an array buffer? I don't care what you send. No. Okay, so that's slightly annoying. I mean, for now, I'm just using JSON. At some point, this will come back to haunt me. I need to send the headers. So let's look at headers. X custom test header, and I want to see test header. Let's reload. Yep, we're expecting that. We're going to send JSON request.body, but we'll say request.body.message plus equals the custom header. Getting undefined. Let's say request.headers. Yeah, can I do dot set request headers? Let's console log request headers. Run that. Okay. Can I get object entries to pull these headers out? No. Okay, request headers. What? Reveal yourself to me. All? There we go. So I can send request headers all. Failed to fetch. So I've got to do that. Can I do dot headers? I do super test bulk set headers. Set multiple headers at once. Hmm. Super test headers. Do set all the examples of set only set one header at a time. API can use any superagent methods. Let's find the documentation. Headers. And this shows calling set with an object. So what is the complaint? Let's log out, request headers all. What is request headers all? It's an object. The string argument must be of type string or instance of buffer, received an instance of object. I have been informed that I'm allowed to do that. Do they do their own set on supertest and so they don't allow for that? Come on, friends. Lib agent set. Do request.set and request equals new test. Where does set come from? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and see if we can do, let's say const request equals this, and then we'll await request. Put the send at the end. We'll make our request. Let's call this super test. The super test, and then request. We will do request.headers dot for each, and we'll set them one by one. And let's see if you like that better. Failed to fetch. No. What is this all about? It's not like me setting headers at all. Yeah, what on earth? Fascinating. Say if key equals x custom, let's set it. Not like the content type. What? 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 Are you kidding me? When I said, what on earth is going on here? So I'm like, hey, friend, don't set content type. So if you're not content type, let's go ahead and have fun. But if I try to set the content type, okay, that's just because I was setting the wrong content type. Fantastic. So we can go back quite a few steps. Don't need to do all this. Don't need to do all that. Be gone. Set all headers. Awesome. And the content type is application JSON. Unexpected const. No, why are you falsifying my content type? Oh, because I put it there. I want content type application JSON. There we are. So this is nice. Do you mean to call get? What type does this want? So request app. If I just cheat and say add key of super test. I'm just gonna say ts expect error uh, request method downcased will be one of the valid request methods. Okay, so I've got a proof of concept here. I'm not in love with how slow this test is. This is a half a second test. I am in love with how Frankenstein-y it is. I wonder if I can profile with vtest. Let's see. Vtest profile. Vtest flame graph profiler. Built-in benchmarking support. Vtest bench. This is like benchmarking. Okay. Node flame graph. How to create a flame graph. Single command flame graph profiling. Interesting. Can open it in V8. So let's try So what happens if I do npx 0x npm test? Profiling did not work. Do this with npm. It would be real nice if this worked with an npm script. 0x. That seems fine. I can try using this one. Oh, but I don't want to do, this is just like literally using the command line. Let's see, node 0x npm. How to use in combination with the TypeScript. Hmm. So instead of npm test, npx vtest run. No. No such. Try npm -d 0x. Get this in this project. Is it dev script? No. Hmm. Node 0x vtest. Let's uninstall that because that seemed like a pretty hefty install. Let's do vtest node debugger. Node inspector. We'll do no threads. And then we will open up the inspector. Okay. We'll profile. But then, aha, like this. We'll stop. Let's clear that. We can filter down to just fetch. Debugger is attached. Go to performance and record. When that played, it's not working very well. Maybe we can do inspect, no threads, run. What if we do it.only console profile and then console profile end? Does this work a little better? No recordings. Can I tell this to just do a pattern from the command line? Test pattern. I think I can give it a specific file. Let's go source. Where are we? We are in pages, fetch test. Don't need help anymore. Yeah, that just runs one test. So we'll do inspect break. It won't ask for run. I'm gonna leave this running. And now the debugger is attached. But let's okay, console profile. Can't do that from here. Debugger listening. We'll go and we'll look at that. We'll record. Rerun. Still stuck on initializing profiler. That's not super helpful. How do I get node generate flame graph? Do I have perf installed? Can I install perf? Installation here. All right. Do I have perf? No perf. Let's see, can I do Mac install perf? No, perf is specific to Linux, so it's annoying. I want to get a flame graph to check this out, but I guess I can hang on and ignore that for a second because I did get this working. So let's move this to its own stuff. Okay, so we can sort of take a few steps. We can cover everything. All right, so that's still working. I want to take this setup code and move it outside. So I'm going to take, for a quick second, I'm going to take this API endpoint and move it to my actual server, the API router. We'll do API router dot post test, and we will send back the same thing. That's going to break our test. Well, it's not yet. I'm going to take this out of my little test server. That's broken now, so I can get rid of these, get rid of that, and I want to take in app. We will import app from server. This is export. It's a named export, so we will import from there. This does not work. Why not? Getting undefined. uses API router. Do something like export app. Make sure these are all defined in the order I expect. No. That breaks. Okay, I've got to call this a stopping point for the day. So I've got to go drive a car. So I have scheduled tomorrow, same time, and I'll be back. So goodbye.